First things first, Austin, I got to do a little bit of housekeeping. I got to do some really important housekeeping. And that it looks like you have done some literal housekeeping.
Oh, you mean the fact that we have that shelf there?
Yeah. And
So
okay.
everything looks a bit more cleaner in the back?
I could go through the VODs or your stream VOD, but like you had to have finally taken the yellow Pelican case out of the living room. Unless you just moved it out of frame.
I did. I finally returned that. That I think I've held on to that for I think a year.
A year? Oh, no.
I think it might have been a year. Yeah.
Did they ask you for it?
Believe me, no, they never asked me for it. Honestly, I probably could have gotten away with just keeping it, which I'm pretty sure is Slax's plan. Don't tell anybody. But I was just honestly hoping they would just hire me again, so I wouldn't have to, ship it back and forth. But yeah, it was like, all right, time to make some more space, and that's been sitting there forever. It's really heavy, which is part of the reason why I was delaying putting it out there.
Did you pay to ship it back? Did it have return label attached already?
No. Okay. They send it with a prepaid label.
They're gonna get that package back, and somebody at the office where it's going to is going to be confused. They're gonna be like, "Wait, when did we send this out?" I like both the cleanup in your background. I like the new shelf. I like the PS5 on its side. I also like the mustache that's going on.
Thank you. The mustache started after TI, actually. I shaved the bottom part of my beard and I left the mustache for our vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been growing it out ever since. It's for the holidays.
For the holidays?
I determined, I'll probably go back. I'll take it off after Christmas. But the part of the plan is to go up, and I'm gonna see my mom for Christmas, and I'm gonna trim down the beard and make the mustache really apparent. And I think my mom will find it funny.
Does she know that this is happening? Or are you gonna show up and you're gonna be like, "Look at me,
No.
I'm a child
Exactly.
predator."
That's part of the plan. Is just to show up and her to be surprised by my appearance.
I love it. A couple of things have happened since we last talked. One, I went down to Mexico, and I'm going to tell you about it.
You went to Mexico.
I went to Mexico. So this year, I guess starting a couple weeks ago, but this is the year that basically all of my friends are turning 30, and a couple of them, I want you to know the one person in the comment who points out that I say non-zero a lot. I just thought about that and didn't say it because of you. You're in my fucking head. Anywho, sorry. You know who you are. Anywho, a couple of them are getting married. So there is a lot of 30th birthday parties pending, including my own, and also bachelor parties pending, because, I mean, who wouldn't want me in their bachelor party? Am I right? Am I right? Beacon of fun over here.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! So
a planner first and foremost.
They're like,
I would bring you to my bachelor party just to get you to plan the whole thing.
You'd be like,
Put
okay,
you to work.
We got the fun guy, we got the drug guy, and we got the event planner, and I fall into one of those categories way more than the other two. So I went down to Mexico for the first time. We drove across the border, went down to Ensenada, and so Tijuana is a city that has I would say, poor reputation for crime and violence, which is probably earned in some way, shape, or form, right? Like that's the thing. It's kind of, I think it's legitimately not super safe there. And we were all packed in a small car. There were 5 of us, and we were driving with the destination of Ensenada, which is in Baja, California. So it's about an hour and a half away from San Diego, because San Diego... Go ahead. Yeah?
I'm looking list of cities by homicide rate.
Uh-huh. Top 3?
Where do you think Tijuana is?
Top 3?
Yes. Mexico is in the... Actually, Mexico dominates the top 5.
Is
which
Tijuana number 1?
Kind of expected, but also didn't expect it to be that thorough. They also have 7th, but yes, Tijuana is number 1.
Okay. Well, that just adds
So,
like
yes, it may have earned that reputation. Yes, Joey.
that just earns data now to the stories for the people who don't believe me and think I'm being a little scaredy cat. 5 of us, one car, were trying to get down the coast of Baja California, and to do that, you kind of got to cut west across Tijuana and get to like the highway that runs along the coast, and that's like it's like a pay road. It's kind of maintained. It's nice, and we're gonna get down to Ensenada. My friends, who one of them has done a lot of vacationing in and around Mexico. They grew up in San Diego. Their parents are Mexican. Just was like guiding us a little bit off of the GPS route because the GPS isn't the best there. And I don't want to exaggerate, but I felt like I almost died.
Okay.
So very scary moment. Good God, I really don't think my mom listens to this and she can't hear me downstairs, but like very scary moment. And not even that scary, but like in my head I was building it up a little bit, is that we went through more of a slummy rundown neighborhood in order to get to the freeway because we missed like the main road to get over to where we needed to be. And
so like, the bad part of the murder capital of the world. Okay. Yeah.
Potentially, yes. And as we were driving down that road, we got stopped, which is something that you don't want to have happen, by construction workers because they were like apparently repaving part of the Indiana Jones road that we were on. So there was a bunch of cones. And then when we go to back up, there's a car behind us that isn't really moving. And then also they're now blocking off behind us. So I'm thinking, okay, they're blocking off the road in front and behind. Like, let me just get my wallet out so I can give it to somebody and figure out like how to not get murdered. It's also like predominantly.
Wait. Whose decision was it to go there for this 30th birthday party?
The birthday birthday. So his girlfriend is actually a Mexican national. She was born there. Okay. She speaks some Spanish. She is very white. And no one would know that she's a Mexican national unless you had paperwork to prove it. So with her, they were like, oh, let's go to Mexico. And me, being the great friend that I am, I wasn't like, maybe that trip's not for me. I'm like, it's your 30th birthday, Brian. Of course I'm going to go. Okay. So I went, and you know what? I had a really good time for the vast majority of it. The one exception being trapped in front and behind in the car.
Yeah, so
not
you're
the good part
blocked
of
in
Tijuana. So we just kind of go over to a side street. At what point we try and like loop around, and when we loop around, so in Tijuana, I didn't know this. Maybe this happens in other parts of Mexico. Maybe it happens in other countries that I'm just not aware of. Is that like the army just. The federales just kind of drive around in big open trucks with a bunch of assault rifles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we veer off, and then we're on like this really steep incline of this hole with a lot of potholes, and my friend is trying to navigate the potholes. Also, he has like a 4-banger car, so like the engine is not happy with the whole incline thing, and we're stuck nose to nose with one of these federale trucks, and this guy is just sitting there like nonplexed with a large assault rifle, and I'm pretty sure that he's not gonna hurt us, but like I'm pretty sure they're the good guys, but just not the most calming visual. Eventually, we get up to the peak of the road, turn around, and then a car in front of us just stops in the middle of the road and puts their flashers on. And I'm like, oh, this is how we die part 2. So we go around them. That road is also blocked off. We eventually find like a DoorDash style driver who is riding a motorcycle and is like presumably has an order he's taking somewhere. And we think that he probably knows which way to go to get around all the construction. So we follow him for a little bit, meet up with a bunch of cars, get to the main road. Eventually, we collectively exhale after about 10 minutes of thinking that we're all going to die. And then we drove down to Ensenada. It was great. Everything is very cheap. We had like a giant lobster dinner for like $20. It was weird. Anywho, my Spanish, passable to order food, impossible as soon as someone asked me a follow-up question.
Yeah, which probably means you would have been very bad in a hostage situation.
Yeah, no sé, no comprendo. Por favor, lo siento. Mi español es small.
Tijuana has in 2019 they had 2,300 homicides, over 2,300 homicides.
That's like 200 a month.
Yeah, that comes down to
That's like 50 a week.
134 homicides per 100,000 people.
I'm really glad
Which
that you
is-
looked up these stats, friend.
Yes, for per capita. Number 2, Juarez is 104 per 100,000. So Tijuana is like, they're not first. They're first by a long shot.
Oh my god.
And the Juarez is way ahead of the rest of the pack too. So you were Tijuana is apparently really the murder capital of the world. Holy crap.
So
I did not know this.
Mexico. Good for cheap food, good food, sun when it's not gloomy. We were in a town that is predominantly driven by tourism, from cruise ships, but there was no tourism there. So we were like the only outsiders around for the weekend, basically. All the bars were empty. That was weird. You can just buy a lot of drugs there that are like controlled and regulated in the States, which is interesting. May or may not have got a bottle of Xanax for $5. To plead the fifth there if anybody asks. But it's really interesting. All the drugs were like really cheap, and I'm like, I have no need for like painkillers or like muscle relaxers or anything. But I went, hey, how much does the Adderall cost? And they're like, oh man, white people. The guy said this. He spoke English more than some other people there. He's like, white people love those. We charge $10 a pill. And I'm like, holy shit.
God damn.
Yeah. So had an Airbnb down there for the weekend. Came back up. And because I don't have global entry like some of my other friends did, me and one other person got to wait in line to cross the border back to San Diego on foot, which was an experience. All these people complaining about the border. It was very nice and organized. I mean, maybe I was at a good time, but like I don't know what the problem was. We got we just waited like an hour. We crossed on foot. They looked at my passport. They said, "I guess you belong here." Walked across. There was no bathrooms on the American side, but there were on the Mexican side. So like, I mean, should have peed in Mexico. But yeah, so that's what I was doing last Sunday, Monday.
You want to I've been reading through this list now. The top 50, which there are some recent statistics. Apparently Fresnillo in 2021, which is a smaller city, only 240,000 people. 202 homicides per 100,000 people. In the top 50, it's pretty much all the Americas and South Africa. That is the full list. But my question to you is, there are 4 U.S. cities
Detroit
in this list. Okay, and I was going to ask you, what can you think of what cities those would be? Detroit is on the list. Detroit is way down on the list.
Okay.
Detroit is actually 4th in the U.S. list.
Okay.
So there are 3 cities ahead of him.
Oh man. Cities that have really high. This is per capita, right?
Yes.
Oh man, Detroit just makes sense because it's a meme. I would say. I'm trying to think of like a place in California. Is Los Angeles on the list?
No.
No.
San Juan is 16th on the list.
Fuck me. Maryland. This is so embarrassing. Yes.
Baltimore is on the list. They're 11th.
And above, okay,
Baltimore.
So they're above Detroit. I mean, obviously they're all above Detroit.
Yes, and number 1 for the U.S. and number 9th on the total list is St. Louis.
St. Louis is that many homicides?
Yeah, St. Louis is, apparently. I think it's because it's smaller. There's only 300,000 people who live there. So maybe 2019 was just a really bad year or something.
God, that's wild. I wouldn't.
No, never mind. St. Louis was a really bad year in 2021 too. So.
Oh no.
So never mind about that.
Yikes. Well, I survived the murder capital of the world, and anybody who was listening in Mexico, which I saw the Spotify Wrapped, and there's a number of people. Beautiful country. Glad I didn't get killed.
Yes, it is.
What have you been keeping busy with, buddy? You might have been, if I had to guess at what you've been doing, maybe a bit of work for 2023, and maybe what's going on with ye olde Arkosh Gaming.
Yes, I've been very busy. There's been a lot of stuff that is going on behind the scenes. Some of the stuff I can't talk about yet. Some of the stuff I can talk about, which is the Arkosh stuff, and that has been it came down to the wire. So like 2 days ago, we put out the announcement that the old Arkosh roster was being released, and then yesterday, right before the deadline, we put out the announcement of the new roster with a super good hype video that our editor, Mr. Chicken Nuggets and Slacks put together. They did a sick job. If you haven't checked out that video, definitely check it out. It's probably the best team announcement video you'll ever see. Liquid included.
Was there? Okay, I just want one of them. I think had more upvotes on Reddit. Not that that's an indicator of anything. Not that I want to. It's whatever. I'm really happy for both of us.
Multi-million-dollar organization beats the three guys in their pajamas. Good job. 2,000 upvotes. Good job.
You know what? Fuck the little guy. You're right. So, were you anxious at all about waiting until close to the end of the time period to actually register the DPC team?
You have no idea. You have no idea how anxious I was. All right, so we released the old organization, the old team. That has been a thing that we knew that we were going to do for a very, very long time. We started trying to build a new team at TI. And we talked to a number of pro players. Most of them I will not name because I think in some ways maybe it looks bad on them if they're considering Arkosh. But one of them,
I listen to We Say Things.
Yes, I listened to Suns fan. He'd say he talked to Quinn, and Quinn's plan was, either go to Europe or go to Arkosh. And that was a conversation that we had with Quinn. We pretty much had conversations with most of the America's pro players who are streamers. We had that conversation, and there was a lot of people who said that they would be down, but then later said, I'm one more year, or like they got some sort of offer that was too good for them to not play this year. Which makes sense. I think a lot of pro players naturally, when they lose at TI and stuff like that, they're like, fuck this, I no longer want to be a pro player sort of thing. So it's easier for them to be like, yeah, I want to do something different. But then once the next season starts up and people start asking about teams and stuff like that, it's hard for people to give up on their dreams. Even if it's very unlikely that they'll achieve those dreams, it's, they still want to go for it. You don't want to go into retirement while still having regrets. You want to give it your all and then retire. So I appreciate everybody who did go back and decide, okay, maybe not. But we did have some pretty fire rosters lined up at some point in time that would have been super sick, both on a streaming and content front, as well as a actual player front. Which what we ended up with is still amazing. But yeah, we went through 20 different iterations of this roster.
Shit.
We got blocked in so many different ways, whether it was players decided to go back or other circumstances preventing us from going with a team that we wanted to go for. I mean, there was pretty much everybody on this current roster that we ended up with. Almost everybody on that list was not on most of the other lists that we had for teams. In fact, we came to a point in time where there was some really forbidden names, he who shall not be named sort of people that were potentially ending up on the roster, but then ultimately decided it was too big of a brand risk for us to go that route. And so we almost said,
it takes more than an offer from a fake USA team to make my PP go hard.
No, all right, that would never be a possibility, first of all. Jesus Christ, that was too deep and too dark there, Joey. But there was definitely some names on the list that would have been interesting to say the least. But we ultimately decided if it was between like potential brand risk or not doing it at all, potentially for the whole year, because what's going to change? If we can't get a lineup this season, what's going to change next season, you know? So we almost didn't have a lineup, period. But it all came together in the last 24 hours. So super relieved about that. Now all they have to do is qualify.
I think a couple things. Max, great idea. We got to stop sharing players, though.
We've been working on that one for like a year, man. A year ago, Koifa said, no way. But Slacks worked on him, and we finally got him. Let's go.
Great guy. I think that y'all are probably just the favorites to qualify for a spot at this point. Like, at this point, there's expectations because, like, the roster on paper doesn't look bad. I would argue the roster on paper looks better than some of these teams I'm seeing in Division 1.
Yeah.
So
I would agree that. I mean, this was a roster that almost ended up in Division 1. But we tried to buy a Division 1 slot. That ended up falling through for something else that
the offer for 5 Rat 4 staff wasn't good enough for him. Like, they were really
I'm just interested to see what who did take the Division 1 slot, how they do, and if they're still in the DPC by the end of the year, sort of thing. But I think our lineup would have been a legitimate Division 1 contender. I think they'll do perfectly fine in the open qualifiers. I'm not really too stressed about that, especially since there's 4 qualifiers. I'm not sure what's up with that, but I guess it means that 2 teams just abandoned their spots entirely.
Oh, that's not on Wikipedia yet.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's definitely an announcement. There was definitely like 4 qualifiers put forward. So this is at least somewhat public information. And I'm not terribly surprised that two teams gave up their Division 2 slots. That's not terribly surprising. I do know there's some. I don't know all the rosters and like where they're going to end up Div 2 versus Div 1 wise, but I do know that there's definitely some buying of slots, which is definitely more commonplace and accepted now.
When are we going to find out what a slot costs? Like, that's what I want to know.
Well, it costs a bare minimum of $22,000 because that's what you get for getting 8th place, I believe, in the Div 1
that
DPC.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yes, and you get nothing if you get knocked out of Division 2. So the bare minimum that you can make if you get into Division 1 is $22,000, and then you drop down to Div 2, and if you get 7th or 8th, you get no money whatsoever. So that is like the bare minimum you should be selling that slot for.
That makes a lot. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. But that also requires you to either have some sort of like setup where you could pay for that slot up front, which is a lot of money, or have the buyer be willing to wait until you get that. And yeah, it's a setup that's kind of messy in that regard. But there are a lot of interesting NA stacks, and I don't know who's buying what slots, sort of thing. So I actually don't know who's in open qualifiers.
Interesting. That sounds like content for us to talk about in a week or two when we find out more. I asked the question about if you were nervous about the final day stuff because we also submitted our last player like I don't know, like maybe 8 to 12 hours before the deadline, and that was really contentious. I had to like beg Will and other people to be like, hey everybody, it's gonna be fine. Can we just fucking wait to Friday so I can finish editing this video? And they're like, what if something goes wrong? And I'm like, what's gonna go wrong? And then apparently something went wrong when we tried to register. So, you know.
Was that, it was 24 hours before, I think, the deadline hit. I do know there were some teams who were having problems signing up. Like, as in they put it in, they were getting like an error. Mm-hmm. So you were one of those guys?
Yeah. It got resolved, and like there's the world where Valve would be like, sorry, we had a website error and you guys guess you guys can't play. Like, that's just not gonna happen. Like, I'm not really worried about that.
I don't think so either, but there's also like, I'll use your word, a non-zero chance that could happen. Like, that's the crazy part, right? Is that you just don't know. Valve is in so many ways an unknown entity when it comes to rules and stuff like that you just don't, maybe they'll just won't get back to you. You know, maybe you can't register on this site and there's an error or something, and maybe you send a complaint and they just never get back to you.
Yeah, I think that we would have like legacy privilege and probably be okay. But like it was
probably.
It was contentious internally to try and push the announcement of NISHA as late as possible. So background from my side on the liquid half of the fun roster announcement is that we have known about NISHA for a minute.
Almost like immediately after TI or something. Yeah,
that's hearsay and a rumor. I don't know anything about that. But so nobody like internally really was pushing for like a plan to like take photos with NISHA and like do something. And then I got back from this extended vacation that we had, and I went, "Hey everybody, what's the NISHA situation?" And they went, What? And like that. So now this feels almost like I'm calling out some of my own coworkers, which I guess is the case. It's what I'm doing. But also,
okay, you're also calling out yourself in some way. This is, you needed to delegate this to somebody, and that person needed to get it done.
I don't know if it was like totally my responsibility, but like I made it my responsibility very quickly.
Yes.
And I'm like, hey everybody, we have to do something immediately. So we got NISHA got on a plane and was in the Netherlands on Tuesday morning Europe time, and we did the announcement on Friday. So
wow,
it was
a fast turnaround.
It was a very quick turnaround. It ended up being like something that we partnered with SAP on to like get a little bit of money, which is why there's some branding in our announcement. We got them to do an interview. We filmed a little bit of a cinematic open. Like there was a lot of people who worked really hard in like a crunch scenario to make it happen, and really did in a short time span. But oh boy, was that not ideal for us.
Yeah, our announcement had some similar time problems there, as in we were deciding between two different players 24 hours before I think the lock went in, and we were working on the video the day before, and I think we wrote the scripts, and then I sat in, me and Avery sat in with Slacks and Philip as they edited the video together. But we didn't have to fly anybody. We just took pictures and photoshopped them over fantasy images. So our setup's a little bit easier to do on short notice than yours.
So here's the thing that I'm thinking about this is that there's two reasons why this had to be like a win for Team Liquid. One, you have to service NISHA because it is legitimately big news, I think.
Yes.
Like, you can't fart out on that one and just, like, toss a graphic up. Two, because there was so much that's not a word. There was so much negativity around what EG did in their roster announcement that I think everybody collectively is, like, hyper aware that they do not want to be put in that camp. Right? I think that's why we saw
made fun of them, Joey, and you guys almost ended up in the same situation.
You made fun of them very on the nose. That video is funny. Like Nigma did something, and I don't know if what they were thinking with that, but like they made a video for Amar, which was wild. That had Miracle in it, right? Like they did a thing. Secret did more than we've seen them do in the past. We've seen other teams consistently, like I think put forth a little bit more effort, and I suspect that a part of that is because EG fucked up so bad.
Yeah, if EG was like the last announcement of the season, then maybe I could see what you're saying. How everybody would have just kind of like mailed it in, like they kind of always do. But yeah, everyone stepped up their game this year. Thanks, EG. Except for one other organization, which I guess we'll start talking about rosters soon enough, because I want to talk about that Shopify Rebellion. The Shopify Rebels, I guess is what they're called. You see their announcement? Everybody else got the memo of not to just throw out a graphic except for them, apparently, because they one-upped Evil Geniuses. They took their roster and they apparently took their fucking promo and threw out a graphic. They did do a stream. I will say that they did do a stream and Arteezy was on it and stuff, but like for the most part, it was a graphic, and even worse than EG, they had the wrong person on the graphic. How do you fuck that up? How do you fuck that up?
I do not know the size of Shopify Rebellion's internal team. I know that the person who's doing a lot of the show running over there is Dario, TLO, the little one, Liquid TLO. I have oodles amounts of respect for him. I'm a big Dario fan.
Yeah.
Don't know how you fucked that up, buddy. I don't know if don't know how you fucked that up. I don't think that was him specifically doing it, but like there either wasn't enough quality control, enough people working on it, or like I don't maybe Shopify Rebellion just needs to like hire more esports staff if they're being more serious about like fielding teams. They're in like Dota and Halo and Melee and
Valorant. Their big thing is they have a really big Valorant team, and I believe they have a really big or successful Rocket League. For the bigger esports. They're obviously in StarCraft as well.
They're not in the finals, though, right now, which Team Liquid is for the Rocket League. So it's whatever.
Oh, wow. Anywho, look at you guys.
Yeah, finals are tomorrow.
But how do you fuck that up? Like, honestly, like, how much money... And I have an understanding that this deal was, like, probably one of the better deals of the entire... Like, how much money did you throw these guys, and then you just fuck up the announcement like that? It just boggles my fucking mind how you can spend like this, how some organizations just spend millions of dollars on a team, but then can't like fucking market the team to a bare minimum.
I can maybe think about that for a little bit. So like, what does Rebellion have? Well, they have the first part of the name. It's Shopify, right? Which essentially is a company that has infinite amounts of money in 2022. So I suspect that it is easier for them to buy talent and put them under their banner than it is to build out like a staffing department to support everything. I would be willing to bet that their spend right now is maybe one of the most... I'm not talking about Dota. I'm talking about like esports in general. And again, this is completely like I do not know anything, but I would be willing to make the hypothesis that the ratio of money spent on player salaries versus support staff is the most lopsided for them, because they can really easily just like get money, presumably, right, and give them to players.
Yeah.
But it's harder to like build out a business. That's different. So
yeah, I agree, but money does solve a lot of things when it comes to business. I don't know. It just makes me mad when I see these sorts of things, just because, I mean, to be honest, I feel like esports is full of a lot of idiots and a lot of just people
we can
like
talk about TSM later.
Succeed. Who, you know, just fail upwards and stuff like that. And this was just one of the more public examples of just like, how like I just feel like there's just so much waste in this regard. Things like this just happen all the time. This is just one of the more public ones.
This is a conversation that's probably going to be had by like everybody who's a pundit, everybody who wants to talk about it on Reddit, everybody who's an NA fan. Is this smart for Shopify to just like take this roster? Like, it seems like even some of the public are just tired of this Arteezy Bulba crit fly stack.
I mean, it depends on what you want out of the roster. So like I remember talking to a sponsor recently, and I was talking basically to their esports person, and then they in turn have to talk to non-esports people. And they said like one of the things is that it's very easy to translate trophies. You know, trophies translate no matter what. Even if you know nothing about esports, a team holding a trophy translates very well. You know, these guys are winners. You understand that. Whereas other aspects of esports, such as like content creation and YouTube and social media numbers, may not translate as well. So everybody understands trophies. And this is probably one of the most consistent teams in Dota's history. If you do not overly focus. I'm not going to say leave out TI, but if you don't overly focus on TI, if you were to trade TI like any other tournament, then this EG stack would be one of like, I mean, if they weren't in Dota and they were in another esport that had a more level playing field, like you just like, let's say more like CSGO, right? Where there's like maybe 2 majors a year and there's these other big tournaments, and like, so you can have your peaks and valleys, but there isn't like, they would probably be like, they would go down as one of the most dominant teams, right? They would go down as like next to Virtus Pro or stuff like that, you know, because being consistently top 3 is very impressive. So if you're looking for that out of your roster, yeah. If you're looking for like the specific Dota community to be hype about your talent, then no. But to be honest, what does that get you anyway?
Not a ton, really. Like, you're right. If you're talking about trophies, I mean, this is really early to call this shot, but I'm looking at the Division 1 NA page on the Wikipedia right now. I'm tabbing through the teams. I'm looking at the players. We'll talk about more of them in a second, but I don't see a world where EG's not going to win 3 DPC trophies. Excuse me, where Shopify Rebellion is not going to win 3 DPC trophies in NA this year. Like,
yeah,
it looks like TSM's strength has nosedive. It looks like Saberlight, who was my favorite member of TSM by a margin for many reasons, is now making their team, making Shopify even stronger. And what competition is there? BA didn't win games for like 8 months last year or something. We don't know who this stack with like ESK and like Napkin is. Like, Nouns probably still isn't a real team.
Wait, ESK is playing with Napkin?
Yes.
How did you? Where is that slot? Where are you seeing this team? I need to know.
This is it's just on the Wikipedia right now.
Interesting.
I mean, it could be. Who knows, right?
I'm sure I'll have more to say about that one later. But yes, I think that very likely Shopify Rebellion will. I mean, they're gonna go to majors, right?
Everyone,
if not every major,
everyone. They're gonna win every season.
Probably most of them. I still think, especially with the addition of Saberlight, who I also think Saberlight is very good, and I think he'll slot into this team pretty well with his kind of play style. I'm pretty optimistic that they're gonna do well at majors and stuff like that. Like, I agree with Reddit. Like, I actually did want to see, just for a change, I just wanted to see this lineup kind of blow up. I think we talked about this on the previous podcast. I wanted to see these guys on different teams just because I think it would shake up the Dota scene. I think it would make things a lot more interesting to watch. But I do not agree with Reddit in the fact that like these guys could never make it or something like that. I think Saberlight is a very nice addition, and they've shown that they can do very well in the past. Yeah, maybe they choked some grand finals and stuff like that, but I would still back a team that it gets consistently, top 3, top 4s, as opposed to a team that could win TI but could also not make TI at all. I think you've got one of the closer things to a sure thing with the Evil Geniuses when it comes to making TI.
This is going to be the most sure thing out of any team in the entire DPC, probably.
Yeah.
Dude, who's going to be the first? So you again just said EG. Who's going to be the first person on broadcast who calls them EG?
I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of fuck ups when it comes to that, especially since you're not actively calling a different team EG. If you are covering the NA broadcast, right?
Yep.
If you're covering the NA broadcast and you were calling a different team EG all the time, but EG is going to be in South America, so it's not even like there's that team to really break you of that habit. So yeah, it's gonna happen. It won't be me.
I'm gonna call out some other teams just to talk about real quick. We can go like division. Sonics. Quinn is now over in Europe, but everybody else like doesn't have a team. Is that correct? Did MSS get a team?
MSS got a team. He's on Old G.
Okay.
He is playing with them.
Okay.
Their statement about Old G is that like they kind of put forward like this is kind of a fun team. I don't believe that for a second. I think that they are taking the OG mentality of old, which was the fact like, who the fuck cares regular season? Only care TI. But I don't believe for a second this is a Team Bald or an Arkosh. I fully anticipate that these guys are going to be strong competitors, especially later on in the year. And I think they are going to gun for TI, and I think they will, if they make it a TI, could have a very high placement at TI. I don't believe for a second this is no practice, no scrim team.
I bet that depends on their results. I think if they see I bet the results are going to be proportional to the level of effort. But I suspect that you're right.
Yes, but at the same time, okay, like I say, if they don't make Division 1 by the end of Season 2, then yes. I think we'll see some sort of roster change up, and maybe some of them will be full meme team, and then some of the more serious members will go on to more serious teams.
Couldn't Thompson have found like a real team?
Yeah, I just don't believe that Hobson and MSS are content just to meme around. And I also don't think that Seb is either. And I also don't believe No Tail is like. Do you remember the free to play or whatever that true site? The after their TI8 win, that guy was the most fearsome competitor of all of them when they were talking about it. He was like, "Where do we go from here? We'll win another one." You know, he was dead ass serious about that. I don't believe for a second that No Tail's just gonna be dropping all this. I think they are not going to care about the first season or maybe even the second season. But I do think because they're gonna take a whole OG thing of just like chilling out and not really like if they could, they would not play at all. I think. But nowadays with the DPC setup, you do kind of need to be in the circuit.
You have to. What do you put stock in TSM's new roster? We saw an addition of Whitemon and Ari.
Ari, I've heard very, very good things about. My limited, from what I've seen of him, seems pretty good. But this is all in all is a roster that is just full of question marks, I guess. Very high potential ceiling with Tomato. I think any team that has Tomato, I have a fair amount of faith in. But I don't know who Kasani is. I don't really have that much footage of Ari, though I've heard very good things about him. What I know of him is apparently he's only been in Dota for a very short amount of time. I think even maybe a couple years ago, he was like 4K or something like that. Like he skyrocketed. This dude is, I think, probably insanely talented, extremely motivated. So he could be like one of those defining players for a lineup. But you know, maybe one or two of them flop. So Prowl also has had probably one of the bigger glow ups last like 2-3 years of North American players. So
I'd say so. The roster like gives me hope that I think that they could, really be contending for that second spot that is Shopify. But that's
also Moonmeander being a coach, I think, could be really good.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because I think he's a great captain, so slotting him into the coach slot makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, I think this TSM roster could be pretty fearsome. It's just higher ceiling and lower floor than Shopify Rebellion.
I just think that it's hard to choose anybody else over them. Like, I'm not excited by any of these other rosters that exist in NA, right?
That's
and
fair.
Maybe I'll be proven wrong by that. I hope I'm proven wrong by that, but like, I don't expect much from B8 aside from it being a cool story that they're like getting to come play in America.
Yeah. Oh, so they already have the people listed in Division 1, huh?
They do.
Yeah. That yeah, the Esk Napkin plus 2 Russian players. And then you've got Bait, 4 Ukrainians, and Moose. There was a post that Sammy Boy put out there. I mean, I don't really care about this sort of thing. NA, if you look at like League of Legends and stuff like that, and look, NA is always kind of like a bad region when it comes to the PC games.
Sammy
and
Boy's
needs
playing
to
on a
import
team with
talent.
3 imports.
Yeah, and like I generally don't care about this sort of thing. It just incentivizes, like, people are going to come to North America to try and make their way, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't care if they're NA players in the DPC. It could be entirely Europe and Southeast Asia coming to North America for all I care. I don't really care about that.
Maybe that's in the future. If I'm going to port over to South America, I think the biggest news for me is that Alliance now has 2 teams and invested in a Latin American team. I think they just like basically took a Corey and were like, these are ours now. Good business move by Alliance, yes or no?
I think, I mean, didn't we talk about this like a year or 2 ago that like teams investing in South American teams?
Yeah, and I mean, even recently, around TI too, we've had similar conversations.
Yeah, and I think people are now seeing that this isn't just like a Beast Coast fluke sort of thing. Obviously, this last TI really blew the doors open by South America getting a one top 8 team and one top 6 team. So they were actually one of the better performing regions. And I think they're just going to continue to grow. I'm not expecting like a continued like exponential growth. But I do think South America, way more than North America. I think South America is going to become the dominant region of the two over time. I think that's only natural, especially since there's less NA players playing and it's less viable to be a North American player. But then again, maybe it's not viable to be a player in South America either if they're not getting their payout for the DPC. So, you know.
Fuck, dude. Holy shit. Calm down, Austin. Oh, my God.
Yeah, real quickly, there's this big deal about 4D, who is the organizer of last year. They did not pay out for Tour 3, I believe. They have said they paid out like half of it or something like that, and they're working on the other half or some deal like that. But that is a big problem.
What a nightmare for everybody.
For everybody, and a big problem potentially for the future. I won't say more about that, but there is something to be said. Like, people like to say, oh, this is why sponsors don't show up, blah, blah, blah. I don't think this really affects too many things in too many big areas, except for one specifically, which is, especially as Dota gets older, which is not game ruining, but match fixing. Mm-hmm. I think that, like, when you just don't get paid out, like, that I think incentivizes match fixing more than anything else, because if you're not making money the legit way, then fuck it, why not just make some money like the illegitimate way and get something for your time. So I think this sort of thing is very, very bad, and I think match fixing is something that you have to keep your eye on now and in the future. I think that's a potential vulnerability that we need to be examining closely in Dota.
Who got the better exchange between Beast Coast and Evil Geniuses of the region being shooken up?
I think Evil Geniuses for sure. I mean, I said sure at TI that my dream team was Bakaz and Whisper on the same lineup. Because I think Bakaz carried that old lineup, and I think Whisper carried his old lineup. So them being on the same team
Shout
together.
Out Matthew too.
Yeah, for sure. Matthew was instrumental. I think, you know, Chris Luck and Panda Boo, they're great players. So I have a lot of faith in this EG lineup. I think they are the clear favorite for me. But South America is pretty competitive overall. So we'll just have to wait and see.
I'm not familiar with the people who are on Thunder Awaken's new roster, which is kind of a bummer because they just like had a breakout year and then just got poached. So now the brand of the team just has people who I don't really know.
Excel's a pretty old name. He was he's been on, I'm sure he was like on Infamous. Most Peruvian players were at some point in time, if you're an older name. So I'm gonna guess he was on one of the older Infamous lineups, and Alone was the stand-in who did very, very well at the Arlington Major for, I forgot who he stood in for, but he's a beast. He did like even better that he proved himself on LAN. So now if you can get yourself to LAN, you know you've got one guy who's going to excel. No pun intended.
I like that. So the organizer for, we talked about the last one being a little bit and having some issues. Who's doing the DPC circuits this season? Do you know? Like, because it says it's like who is ESB?
Yes, ESB is the organizer. I have only lightly heard of them. That's all I'll say about that. ESB, I'll be able to talk more about them in the future, hopefully. But ESB got it, and since 4D didn't pay out, probably for the best. So yeah, I don't really know a whole lot about them. PGL got NA and Western Europe.
Did they also get Eastern Europe?
No, they did not. I don't want to spoil. Okay, ePulse got Southeast Asia. I believe they announced. Eastern Europe is Paragon. which is a new company, which is made up of the people who put on the initial Epicenter. If you remember those first couple of Epicenters,
Oh yeah, I do.
the guys who put
were they just
those
called
on, which were
Epicenter
really
back
good
then?
tournaments. They were really good shows. They formed a new company, I believe, and they're called Paragon.
Cool. Okay.
And
So
then China is Perfect World, who currently, or I don't know if this is done yet or not, but obviously they aren't going to do the English coverage. So somebody else is going to do that.
So it's a lot of fresh faces. It's a lot of fresh faces. It seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I personally don't think it's okay. So some recent information I thought was interesting that I learned was from a tournament organizer perspective. It is better to have a DPC season than it is to have a major.
Interesting.
From a financial point of view, which I thought was pretty interesting. I wasn't sure which one would be better, like sponsorship wise, versus obviously the cost for doing a major are much, much higher, right? So you would have to sell a whole lot more, but it is a grander event. So I wasn't sure how that would actually pan out. But I learned recently that a DPC region, because the costs are so low, probably is much preferred. So, yeah.
Interesting. I'm gonna keep cranking through some of these and talk about some Southeast Asian Dota, who has been making some news because Bleed is a new brand that I have not seen before, and I don't think they're directly taking. Oh no, nope, I lied. They are. They're kind of taking over the seat that T1 had, because it looks like T1 has divested from Dota, which is interesting.
Yeah, not terribly great. I don't know a ton about Bleed, but I think there are mobile games. Do you know about that?
I don't. I have not. Everybody, I'm going to be very honest, didn't do my research. Don't know.
Okay, they have a Valorant team. So,
but they're not like in like the VCT. So like, do they really have a Valorant team?
Yeah, that's a good point. Blacklist, on the other hand, I do know comes from mobile games. They're from Mobile Legends. So they're from that side of things, which is really good for Southeast Asia overall, because mobile games are massive. So I think those organizations are actually, like, people think of like esports players, classic esports players think of mobile games as like a step down. But from an organization's perspective, I think it may actually be a step up, just because mobile games are massive, and I think they're huge money makers. And I would imagine their esports organizations do pretty well. And mobile games are really big in Southeast Asia, which is why you're probably going to see more of them cropping up there as opposed to other places.
I really am bummed about the T1 thing, only because I love seeing big cross-game brands like existing, especially in the Dota space. And maybe there's a world where they come back into it. Maybe there's a world where this is just a response to the economy, and you see a lot of teams like look at Cloud9, look at Liquid, look at T1, look at G2, look at most places. You've seen people get rid of rosters.
Did Cloud9 get out of like 5 different games or something like that?
That's
doing, like,
kind of accurate.
Like, yeah, I was just like, I remember reading some comments. Somebody pointed out like all of the rosters that they've dropped over the last like year or something like that. Holy crap!
I suspect that they have problems with their crypto partner. But that is
who are they? Are they the same as, are they with FTX as well?
No, I think they have blockchain.com. Maybe, I'm really not sure.
Yeah, just a side note on that, esports is in a weird place because of crypto, because crypto is,
they gave us so much money,
become a backbone.
They gave us so much money. When I say us, I mean like the industry, right? Like so many teams were planning on that revenue. And then when people pull out of contracts, you go, shit.
Yeah.
What do you find interesting about the Southeast Asia shakeup? I'm gonna be honest. I don't really. I feel weakest in the C region in terms of like who is actually a good or bad move for any particular team, regardless of who is like on the final roster. I will say that I'm excited for Boom. I'm excited to see Fnatic stay relatively the same too. I think that those are two teams that stand out for me. Does anybody else pique your interest?
So I think that we're seeing, I don't know if this is just like I don't know what it is about this trend, but it does seem to be that there is a trend of C players coming back to Southeast Asia. So we had Afu, I think, last year come back. This year, Ollie is coming back, and there was
And
another
X
name,
Nova.
X Nova. That's right. That's another big name that has come back. So we're seeing some of these Southeast Asian players who played on Chinese teams for a bit. They're coming back to Southeast Asia. That could say bad things about the Chinese organizations and Dota there. I mean, we've all heard the Dota, how Dota player base in China is gone down pretty dramatically, and how they're not actually playing Dota anymore, but they're playing like 4+2 and some of the custom games and stuff like that. But yeah, they're coming back to Southeast Asia. So Talon is definitely the other lineup, because I think that at least some of those names I'm pretty invested in. I think 23 Savage and Jabs are very good, and I think Ollie. I mean, in general, Southeast Asia has had a problem with not having captains, right? That has been the problem for Southeast Asia for the longest time, and I think that doesn't like, it's made worse by the fact that many of the Southeast Asian players that went over to China were support players. Now, I can't necessarily say that they were captains per se, but you're more likely to have a support player be a captain. So the fact that they're coming back, and potentially there are more captains coming back to Southeast Asia, could be good. That lineup that I just mentioned, Talon, I don't know if Ollie is the captain. I kind of feel like Jabs holds that role, because that's what he has been in traditional past. But I'm just saying in general, like maybe X Nova. I don't know if he's captaining Boom, for example.
When you're talking about people going back, you also got to talk about Dubu, right?
Oh yeah, Dubu went back.
He's on
yeah.
Bleed. He's with Jackie on that new team.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that Bleed lineup. Maybe it's because I don't really know anything about their mid laner, Cordan. But yeah, that is not the lineup that I'm looking. I'm looking at Boom, Talon, Fnatic, Blacklist. Those are like my four that I look at as potentially top four. I don't know if SMG is going to turn things around with mid one. That was one of those lineups you expected to be a contender, and they just weren't last year, really.
Is Blacklist just an old TNC team?
Yeah.
Like completely top to bottom? Because Raven, Cuckoo, Tims, and Carl all play together on TNC, right?
Yeah, and AU's definitely played on TNC at some point in time. I don't know if he played on it the same time as those other guys.
It looks like he was there in 2018 and also in 2015 for a small stint, so maybe there has to be some crossover.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some, but yeah, all TNC alumni at least. You could say that.
Is it like fucking everybody?
I mean, it's like Infamous and Peruvian players, and yeah, it is kind of like that. If you're a Filipino player, probably played on TNC at some point.
You alluded to China potentially being in a bad spot, and I think that at least that's a pretty predominant Western narrative right now. I'm seeing it quite a bit on Reddit. You see it with the retirements that have happened. You see it when looking at the DPC page and not knowing like what is really going on with all these teams. CDEC gave up their spot. RNG gave up their spot, which I'm also not excited about. What is interesting about China? I mean, I don't know, like PSG can't have had an upgrade, right? What is left of the RNG team can't be an upgrade, right? Like,
yeah.
What's exciting here for you?
I mean, what's exciting is new talent, which has always been a problem for China in general. I think the DPC, and not necessarily DPC, but like China in general has always done a good job with junior squads, right? They have these like academic type like build up squads where they could just like seed and then like pull whoever stands out. So I think, but there is, I think, more fresh players, more fresh names than probably any other season for China. So
like IG's like basically all new sans emo.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that is a good thing for a region that does seem to be stagnating, or even going on the decline. And you compare that to like North America, right? NA, it's like you see the same names. They're just put in different spots. Like, oh, now this guy who was in Div 2 is now in Div 1. This other guy's in who's Div 1 is in Div 2, but like really it's just reshuffling the same fucking names that you see all the time. So that is the upside. Comparing them to an even the deadest region, I would say.
I am excited about one thing in China, and maybe this is because I really like watching Ghost play, is I think that Extreme Gaming had a real glow up. And for me, who again, ignorant to a lot of the new Chinese players, don't know what's going to happen, the new lineup of Ghost of Extreme adding Ghost and JT, who are two Malaysian players, feels really solid to me. And they're probably the team that I'm going to be looking at along with me, criticizing PSG, LGD.
Yeah, I mean they've got PYW and DY, so they're a little OP in that regard. Their support duo is really good.
Eastern Europe, most people are talking about this Bet Boom team.
That Bet Boom team is super stacked. Pure GPK, Nightfall, Save, Toronto, Tokyo.
Playing 5.
Toronto Tokyo playing 5, so he has moved into a different role. In doing my research for TI and like going through interviews and stuff, I had because I think Toronto Tokyo in some ways was like the quietest of the bunch. And the more I learned about him from what his teammates and what he said specifically, the more I valued him. So I think him moving into the 5 position could be good, could be bad. But I think him in general as a teammate on any Dota lineup is very valuable. We'll see whether or not his ideas of Dota, or maybe it's not even his ideas because they have Save on the team. And he's always been a captain. So maybe Toronto Tokyo is actually going to play more of a back seat. And he's not going to be a captain. He's just going to be a playing 5, which there's only a number of those out there, really. But yeah, this is an all-star lineup, and it's one of those lineups.
It's a super team lineup, like truly, it's a super team lineup.
Yeah. So look for them to be the favorite for first, and if they don't make, if they're not in the points by like for TI by the end of the 3rd season or leading up to the major or something, like if they're not going to the 3rd major, expect some sort of roster changes, because this is the lineup that you're expecting. You're not just trying to get first in your region, you're trying to get first at majors. This is a lineup that is built to win TI. It's that kind of lineup. So
I want to know more about Toronto leaving Spirit, because he was the only one who left, correct? They just picked up they picked up Laurel.
Yeah, they picked up Laurel, who was on the previous Bet Boom. He was the one who, for my money, made their lineup kind of work, because they had the streamer guy. I forgot his name. Sorry. He was playing from the safe lane. He was playing off laners, Dahak. He was playing off laners from the safe lane, and their off laner was kind of playing carries, and Laurel was the one who kind of made everything work.
Yeah, I want to know what happened there. Like, I'm actually just curious if there was like a amicable split of if they're like, something didn't work out, and Toronto's like, I'll leave, because it did seem like that they had something of a kinship going on. So
yeah, Team Spirit. I have to imagine that they got a decent percent of the TI winnings. I have to imagine, because their lineup was not a lineup. Player-wise, they were not set up to be like, this is a TI winning team. So most of the time, it means players are more okay with the organization taking a cut. Then on top of that, all of their massive amount of content that Team Spirit has been putting out since they won TI, I have to imagine they got a decent amount of money from that. That is entirely in my head. I have no information.
I would add to that theory that you also saw Team Spirit more aggressively expand into other games after the TI win.
Yeah. So I think that is sort of evidence that they had a flush of cash, and they've done a lot with it. So they've been honestly one of the best organizations in Dota when it comes to all the content they're putting out. And maybe some of that is just the players and their willingness to do it, because their players are very giving when it comes to their ideas about Dota and like how games win and stuff like that. I mean, they'll go through their matches as content. It's super super good content. So I hope that they continue that. We'll probably get some insight. I haven't checked into it, but we'll probably get some insight into what exactly that came down team wise about that.
We'll have to follow up on that one. Does any other team in Eastern Europe excite you aside from BetBoom being a super team? I know like Ramses is a team with Roger. Navi VTune is like still hanging out on Navi. Virtus Pro is a team of names that I don't know at all.
Yeah, looking at this lineup, the VP one is kind of interesting to me because obviously they're a big organization. And it seems like they've been, because they did that whole divestment thing, that they're now okay to be back as Virtus Pro instead of Outsiders, which was some weird puppet thing. I don't know if they're like just trying out like newish talent, because all of these names I recognize, but none of them am I like, oh yeah, he belongs on a he should be on a team that gets first place in Eastern Europe, you know? But I would not consider myself an insider for Eastern Europe, at least not right now. Mm-hmm. Ducalis was really good for that Puck Champ lineup, I think. I mean, he's a support, so I assume he was a big reason that they had so much success that one season. Noticed, I think, is pretty legit player. He's the one name that like stood out for me. The other three guys, I don't really know a whole lot. But because they invested in this lineup, you know, it seems maybe they believe in these guys and somebody somewhere knows more about them than I do. So that one's kind of interesting to me. Same goes with the Navi and Nikki Cool. I don't know who that guy is, but yeah. Fresh talent is always good to see.
Yeah, it feels like to me that there's three regions that are really in the wait and see camp, and we'll know what is shaking up in, you know, a month or two. And Eastern Europe's one of those. Eastern Europe, China, and Southeast Asia, for me, feel a little crapshooty, and I'll be interested to see what narratives just evolve out of them as we learn, like, what rosters are working together. Because ultimately, like, a lot of this is what rosters are going to work together. I think a lot of people called out for Bet-Boom that, like, this looks like the potential for, like, not only the highest skill ceiling, but the highest tilt floor that could exist. So, you know, what have you.
Yeah.
There's a single region.
I'm sorry. I'm getting messages from Jenkins right now.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but he's pretty much telling me that he's going to spread a lie about me. He's just actively telling me that he's going to spread a lie about me. Because you know Jenkins does his sort of shit. So.
Yeah, he's very very neurotypical. He's just taking.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. I very much appreciate him.
Look out for that lie that's gonna come up in the near future.
Yeah, if he starts saying that I'm a cannibal or something of lesser degree, and you know, then you'll know what I'm talking about.
Okay, noted. Western Europe, last region.
The boring region.
Is it the boring region or is it the most exciting region?
Yeah, they're the boring region because they made TI less hype.
Or if you're
who the fuck cares? 3 teams from the same region in the top 3. What a snooze.
No other team could beat them. What other region beat them? The answer was none of them. The answer was none of them.
All I'm saying is you guys are killing Dota, Western Europe.
Okay, I will fall on that sword and be responsible. Is ATF a good move for Enigma? I got a hot take on this one.
It's not a bad move. It's definitely not a bad move. 100%. How well he's going to slot into being carry. I mean, I think he's good with Sumail. I don't know if he's going to be good with mind control and stuff like that, but they needed a change for sure. And this seems like a pretty big one because Amar is a pretty active voice. He's a big voice when it comes to drafting and team communication. And I think Nigma needed a big change, and this is a big one considering you're only changing one player.
I have no idea how Amar and Kuroki are going to get along.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one. I mean, Amar, I think.
I have no idea how that's going to happen.
Yeah,
Kuroki
Amar
is going to
doesn't
have
really
to.
seem to
Yeah.
to guard his opinions very well. He's pretty open and honest about his feelings. So if he thinks you're doing something stupid, I think he's gonna say that. So I think that'll be pretty interesting with an old dog like Kuro, right? Because before he was on a very young lineup in OG, Taigo was the veteran, quote unquote, of OG, and he's relatively young himself. So it'll be interesting to see how he pairs up with someone who is so revered and has a very long history in Dota and is probably like, for better or for worse, probably set in his ways when it comes to his ideas about Dota.
Mm-hmm. Immortal Faith left Gaming Gladiators. I gave him a lot of credit for what was going on there. Don't know if that's justified. Boom left Gaming Gladiators. They picked up Quinn, which we lightly touched on. Good move for Quinn?
I mean, if you want to be winning a TI, yes, it's a good move. I mean, every North American player, they should have been thinking about this, and I think all of them did consider it in some way. But then snaking winning TI really cements it. It cements the trend. And I know a lot of players were looking to go to Europe. And I think all of them had that idea, before, but they held on to the relics of the past. Then snaking wins TI. And, I think we're like, all right, if I want to win, if I want to achieve my dream, which is winning TI and not just getting top 8, maybe, going and getting 7th, 8th or something like that. If you want to win TI, you got to go to the best. And Quinn is one of the best mid laners when it comes to certain aspects of being a mid laner. I think he's absolutely one of the best. He is well credited for being an incredibly good laner. And we'll just see how he fares in that field. I'm going to be super interested to watch those games. I mean, it's not the first time that Quinn has been in Europe. But I think it is a different Europe than it was 3 years ago during COVID times or whatever that was.
This to me feels like a real put up or shut up season for Quinn. Like if he does not perform well, then I think that his stock really goes down, which feels obvious to say, right? But I don't know if he has fully proven himself outside of the region, right? I guess some international, but I will
say one thing about Quinn is that even if he doesn't prove himself as a mid laner, to be one of the best mid laners in Western Europe and therefore probably the world. If he doesn't prove that doesn't necessarily, I think, spell the end of his career, because from what I understand of him is that he is pretty valuable as a voice in the game. So if you want a leader type person, I'm not saying he's necessarily a captain, but if you want somebody who does add voices, he is a good person to have in that regard. So I could see a world where he transitions to a different role in the future.
Secret gets a new mid laner. That person is Boom.
Yeah, I mean, they had probably the best player in the world, so anybody else is probably going to be a downgrade. But they're still a top-tier team. Expect them to be a top-tier contender.
I doubt that they're getting kicked out of Division 1.
Yeah. And I think, if anything, Chrysalis will probably just continue to have a trajectory upwards, given the success they had at TI and the confidence that comes with that and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Secret's probably fine, but losing NISHA that's rough. Entity lost. Who did Entity lose? Entity lost Pure, because Pure went back to Eastern Europe, and they picked up
Watson, who is pretty highly regarded. I mean, this is a guy who makes appearances in the top 10 all the time when it comes to the European leaderboard. So I think it is not a downgrade. I think it's a pretty decent replacement to Pure, though I still think Pure, I would still hold them in very high regard. I'm a little bit surprised Stormstormer didn't go anywhere. I mean, I talked to that guy at TI, and I know he he said that he and his team talked and they weren't looking to make any changes. But like obviously he was probably getting offers, as were other people like Pierre. So I'm a little bit surprised to see Stormstormer still in that lineup, because I do think that
too
lineup
much of
may
a
have
romantic.
A cap.
Like if he's being loyal to a team like that probably has a lifespan on it.
Yeah,
it sounds like he's
it
being
also
loyal.
could be like of the lineups that had an opening, Team Secret was probably the biggest one, right? Because Liquid kind of already had NISHA. So Secret, it could be that they tried out Stormstormer and they liked Boom more. That's entirely possible. Maybe it wasn't his decision to stay on this lineup. Maybe, but because really, what other options are there? Gaming Gladiators, I feel like you're either going down or you're even. You're not actually going up in that regard. So Nigma held on to Samael, so you're not going there. OG kept to BZM. So if you're a mid laner, there's actually not really other options. So
Watson, looking at his history, he really just played, for Bait and Hellraisers. So his career is pretty young. It'll be interesting to see how he develops ultimately, especially in the carry position.
I don't know if it's Dendy, but I assume it is. But he's got good eyes for talent. There are so many people who went through that lineup of Bait and ended up on much better lineups afterwards. So he's got an eye for talent. OG, they picked up DM, massive pickup. I think I hold DM in very high regard, just because of the conversations that I've had with him, going all the way back when he subbed in for Chaos Esports, I think, at Summit.
Yep,
way
that
back
happened.
in the day. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Green
jersey,
just a false
Chaos.
memory.
Yeah.
Implanted by the government. So that's a real thing. I hold that guy in pretty high regard. Him and ATF have very different play styles, so who knows how that changes OG.
I used to have this theory that ATF might be hard to work with based on nothing but what I've seen of him.
I mean, sure, but that isn't always a bad thing.
They won trophies together, so is it a real bad thing? No.
Yeah, I've heard so many things about strife and conflict being the building blocks for teams that win TI. When you get through those sort of things and you figure out stuff, the last thing I think you want on a roster is people not addressing problems. And I think Amar is probably someone who addresses, if he feels
I think
something
he addresses
is
problems.
not good, I think he addresses those problems. And if you want to win, you need to be that way. And if that creates conflict, okay. But, at the end of the day, you're trying to win in a incredibly competitive field. Not just Western Europe, but the world. So.
And then Liquid got NISHA.
Liquid NISHA, yeah, you guys, look at you, the Manchester City. I keep on seeing this one. I don't know football, but people keep on saying, I really like Liquid, but I feel like they're the Manchester City of Dota. They're just buying up players. I assume, is that accurate, Europeans?
It might be. People might think that. I think that we have more personality. I think that NISHA was in the office for one day and we got him to talk on camera, which didn't happen before. I think he's probably the best mid laner.
Yeah, because you bribed him with all your filthy dollars. God. You just threw euros at him and said, you get paid by the minute, kid. And you threw him $5,000 per minute that he talked.
It is such a fucking... A younger me would have spent more time on Reddit calling people stupid about this, but I'm really taking some of these on the chin.
Yeah.
I don't know how Blitz said it on multiple podcasts in multiple years with you. It's been NISHA talked about it in the interview a little bit. It's not a money thing, and people find it so hard to believe that could be the case. But it's not a money thing.
That sounds like exactly what the spokesperson for the brand would say.
It's not a money thing.
Don't believe their lies. They're offering 10 times the amount of any other Dota team. They're buying up everybody who beats them.
Dude,
Blitz has a fucking note every single time they lose to a team. He fucking writes the name down and then he puts a little tally mark. And whoever beats Team Liquid the most, that's who he bribes with millions of dollars.
God, what a shit show. We have really good benefits, and people find it hard to believe that could be attractive.
All right, enough of your shilling for Team Liquid.
Anywho, I am very excited about the upcoming season. I think that we are real contenders. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I haven't even thought about my excitement for the next season. It's like one of those, like, I don't know if I'm working or not. So, like, if I'm not working, it doesn't matter how exciting the season is to me.
No.
So let me think about that. Is this season exciting? I mean, Western Europe is interesting for sure. That's a very competitive field. South America definitely got.
Is Tundra gonna succeed? Does Nigma's pickup help them? How do Entity Secret and Gladiators play? Will Liquid succeed with a big lineup?
I mean,
will Exit B win a game?
Can Tundra play Dota without Wraith Pact? I feel like they probably can. Can Tundra play on an entirely new patch? That is a bigger question to me. But, it's going to be a full season before we see a big patch. So, I think that's actually probably a big reason why. Like, this patch is great. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think this patch is very good. It's probably one of the better TI patches and stuff like that, but the map has been the same for so long. I feel like we haven't had one of those like big game shaking patches in a very long time. So maybe that's part of the reason why I'm like, because I just don't believe that there's going to be that big of a difference in the quota. And like also so much of it could just go down to like, well, post TI, there are always teams who do not do well in the post TI slump, so even then you're gonna be able to throw excuses their way. Let's say Tundra doesn't do shit. Well, they just want a TI,
Give me give me some winners and losers from the off season. Let's round it out like that.
Winners and losers. Okay, Liquid. They paid enough money to get the best player in the world.
Stop! People are gonna believe you.
I'm in part doing this because I am going to do another podcast with Blitz, and I do know he's read the same Reddit comments that you have. So, listen, I got to feed into these things. That way, Blitz is more incentivized to do another episode of the podcast. You guys bought the best player in the world. Congrats. Big winner.
I think that Arkosh is a big winner.
Big winner.
I think that Arkosh is a massive winner.
Those old losers on the old lineup washed away, and now clean, fresh start with a sick-ass lineup that's going to win qualifiers, win Division 2, and go to a major this season. Not really. Let's set the bar low. These guys aren't actually going to be scrimming just like the old roster, so don't expect that. But maybe I could see them getting a Division 1, which would be super cool. I think... Secret, Game & Gladiators, Entity, OG, they're all kind of just a sidestep, nothing major. Bet Boom, massive winner there. I mean, massive win for the organization, especially. The way they phrased it, something in the announcement, it's like they helped secure Pure, therefore they get this roster for the season.
Okay, weird.
Yeah, that was when I read that, I was just like, what does that mean? Does that mean they're like still in negotiations for the rest of the year, but like for this season, I don't know. But obviously, that's a massive win. That's a super team and a half. And, considering the fact you have storied lineups like Virtus Pro, Navi, and literal TI winner Team Spirit in there, the fact that you ended up with perhaps the highest skill ceiling roster in the region is pretty impressive.
I think a loser might be Beast Coast.
Beast Coast loser, EG winner.
I think EG winner. But I think that Beast Coast has existed in a bubble where they could theoretically be going to every major for the last 2 or 3 years. And now it feels like a question mark if they're going to be on those stages.
Yeah, when you
And
used
maybe
to
they
be
will
the de facto number one in the region, and you're definitely not that anymore. Yeah, that's a loser for sure.
Thunder Awaken, giant loser. They lost their entire team that got fifth at TI.
Yeah, that one feels pretty bad. Winner loser in China, extreme maybe.
Wins, I think.
I mean, I just like J2E, so it's hard to say no to that. And PYW and DY are broken, so that's hard to say no. LGD maybe loser. I know nothing about their offlaner, so yeah, kind of hard to say in that regard. Who else? Southeast Asia winner. Who was the winner in that? I mean, Talon as an organization probably upgraded because they didn't have great results.
Yeah, I don't know who wins Southeast Asia. I don't know who wins Southeast Asia. I don't know who wins South America. North America feels the same. I think that TSM, if I had to list losers, I think TSM might be on the list of losers.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of question marks about that lineup. I mean, then again, they did make grand finals last year, so most likely a loser. Unless this lineup is going to make another major grand finals, then when we look back on it, it will be a downgrade. But I'm not super set on that. Sorry, I got caught up on this like Boom roster. Looking at it, I don't think we really talked about it, but like I'm a really big Yopaj and FBZ fan.
We know that I'm in the Church of X-Nova too, so
True. Now we have a similar team to really pull for it because now they have X-Nova.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of Tims and Skim, they have Zephyr and X-Nova. That one is... I think that one might be a winner just because of...
It's a winner if they win.
Yeah, I mean, 9th through 12th is not a bad placement whatsoever. They ended up losing to PSG LGD, so that's obviously a very respectable team. But I could see, I still think that this roster, this could be what gets Southeast Asia back into the top 8, because they didn't get top 8 this year, right?
No. Eastern Europe, baby.
So,
or excuse me, Western Europe, baby.
Yeah.
I will support...
Southeast Asia's best placement, I think, was Boom, which was 9th through 12th.
Yep.
Fnatic 13th through 16th, Talon 17th through 18th. So I think that is a roster that definitely could get Southeast Asia back into the top 8.
I'm gonna cheer for X-Nova for whatever team he plays on forever.
Okay. All right.
Easy peasy. Big Boom fan. Oh, well, I think that we did the thing. It almost feels like I don't want to say a chore, but like it's Christmas roster season, and we just decked the halls and got to go through all of it, and now we get to do an entire year of kind of talking about seeing if things work or not. I am already booking my tickets to all the majors because NISHA and Mickey is gonna.
I hope I can say the same.
I
want to go to
work, right?
Some of the rumored cities that the majors are going to be.
Were those not confirmed, or have they just been like talked about very publicly but aren't confirmed?
I don't know. Just talked about very publicly, but no tournament organizer I think is going to come forward and be like, "We're doing the major right now,"
Yeah.
So unlike the DPC, which
we're
going to be starting soon. In fact, the qualifiers start tomorrow. Open qualifiers. Actually may have already started for some regions. Tomorrow, North America starts. So Arkosh is actually going to be doing maybe a stream for that where we're casting, I think. It could be me, SVG, and Slacks, or maybe not. If that doesn't end up happening, listen, we barely got this roster in time. Everything else was put to the side until we got the roster in and stuff like that. So we might be doing some sort of stream creation thing around Arkosh. Look for that. But if it doesn't happen, please don't blame me.
Okay. I am now have very high expectations, and I cannot wait to tune in to twitch.tv/Arkosh Gaming tomorrow.
Or possibly other channels.
I know nothing. Yeah. Arkosh and Old G, I think, are the teams that everybody's going to be watching these qualifiers for. So,
For sure.
I look forward to it. I hope that you're going to do well. Not because of you, not because of Avery or Jake, but because of Max.
I have a meeting to go to, and I must pee. The podcast ends now.
Bye.